So it's March 12th, 7:37 in the morning, and I am eating macaroni that I made with this, and some organic black beans, some vegetables and stuff, tomatoey sauce, last night. So it's my leftovers from last night. Oh no, it's fine. So I'm going to talk about two things. One's a book and the other one's a video. So How We Grow is a documentary about farming using regenerative agriculture. Aaron Cuso is shown, sidewalk farmer who farms land but lives in the city. Two Roots farm, half acre of vegetable production. Wild Mountain Seeds grows a diverse farm. Roaring Gardens manages a farm. Her mom was an organic farmer managing someone else's land, as she's doing now. High altitude greenhouse production works. CSA, community supported agriculture, members subscribe in the spring and put money up front to get farm started. A young girl is interviewed. I don't like that. When documentaries show some little girl giving a speech about whatever, I think, okay, so that's the level of expertise here? Like, honestly, I don't know. Maybe it works for some people. It never works for me. We get to hear a non-denominational sort of prayer before a family eats their produce. And that, again, for me, I turn off. Other people, they hear that and they go, oh, look at happy family, just like mine. Assert your God's name here with the prayer. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. So by that point, I felt like the documentary provided little information and seemed to have been made as a classy infomercial with guitar music. I was really not into it. But then they did provide some information, and I started to see where this was coming from. Average age of farmers is 58 years old, so this makes them wonder if there will be family farm soon. So the average age is near retirement. So once they retire, what's going to happen, right? And that's the United States, because that's where this was made. So, they suggested that retiring farmers lease land to young organic farmers. Young organic woman is working without paying herself to get her operation working. The young farmers attracted to this style of agriculture don't seem to be coming in with education in the field. Two Forks Club provides 0% interest loans. It's democratic. Each person gets one vote, and people put in what they can afford, $100, $30,000, whatever. Over $50 million has been invested to help 519 farmers so far. A guy talks about how he doesn't have a couple $1 million to buy land in the Pinkin Valley, maybe it was. And I don't know if that was Montana or Colorado, because there was... Anyway. But locals bought land to be used by young farmers. Young farmers were able to bid for the land and are happy to have the opportunity to farm there and provide produce for the local community. There isn't enough rainfall in the Roaring Fork Valley for farming. Most precipitation is snow. They leverage the weather through irrigation to water the garden. Water rights to ditches are often sold to farmers downstream. And they are now in a 20-year drought in Colorado. They need a water revolution since more people need water and less is available. The gardeners need water, and a couple gardeners showed their hailed outcrop, and the young woman's holding back tears, and they just said, well, you just do your best, And then they were joking about a hail sale, and who knows, nature chop salad, that might be marketable if you could get it up before it all wilts. Tourists pay more for food anyhow, so this might work out there, like in the mountain park sort of areas. One woman says that they grow food because it's better for the environment. I don't believe anyone does it for that reason. Maybe they feel like they're making a positive environmental move or whatever by doing so, but so that might be the motivation, the feeling of they're doing something. Anyway. And I agree, school lunch programs are needed. So, through watching this, I realized that really it's an infomercial trying to convince mostly to convince young people to come farm for free. Because honestly, like these farmers, there was another man talking about, yeah, I paid off my loan and I still haven't paid myself, you know. So he gets a walk behind tractor and stuff, and it's like, okay, that's great. So anyway, how long do people want to work for free to feed wealthy people who've put themselves retired in the mountains, you know, so that they can have a beautiful retirement destination, and they buy land around them so that they can make sure that a big water slide park or something isn't put up right beside them, right? Or they have control over the land that way. So this actually benefits the wealthy people who go to retire in the mountains to buy up land nearby, so that you can rope in some young organic farming wannabes to come produce your food for you for free without paying themselves for their labor. It's an awesome system. You can convince people to provide slave labor. Anyway, Healing Earth by John Todd. Now, the first thing I noticed about this book was, well, the cover. I think it's been used elsewhere. I recognize this cover. And then I noticed that although this book is really short, there's a lot of pictures in it. Full color pictures for no good reason. They could be in black and white, but for some reason they're color. I don't need to see pictures of sailboats and eelgrass, and then another picture with eelgrass with scallops on it. Honestly, the pictures were useless, and they filled up a lot of space in the book. So, at extremely minute sublethal concentrations of the organic chlorine pesticide DDT, parent fish would lose their ability to recognize their young. Instead of caring for their offspring, they would eat them. The first thing that's page 2. 23, Protista kingdom, are microbial organisms with a true cellular nucleus. They can be unicellular, colonial, or multicellular. 6 groups: protozoa, animal-like and mobile. Amoebas 1. Some have chloroplasts and photosynthesize, useful for reducing bacterial pathogens in wastewater. Kelp is a Phaeophyta, brown algae, and Rhodophyta red, regulate global carbon cycle. Dinoflagellata and Euglenophyta, algae famous for red tides. Chlorophyta, green algae. Myxomycetes and Oomoicetes are slime molds and water molds. They absorb nutrients and do not photosynthesize. Page 25. 100,000 species of fungi described today, but estimates are that there are 1.5 million to 5 million, actually. So people need to look into different fungi, I guess. Maybe the field of mycology should open up. 32. Seagrass meadows store approximately 15% of the ocean's total carbon. On a per-acre basis, they consume twice as much CO2 as rainforests. Each year, seagrasses sequester about 27.4 million tons of CO2. Diagrams of water filtration, ecology cells ponds on page 35 to 38. Interesting floating park with floating path, page 49. 61. A distressing number of ponds, lakes, bays, canals, and lagoons in North America are heavily contaminated with pollutants of all sorts. These include heavy metals, agriculture fertilizers, and poisons, as well as pharmaceutical chemicals, including endocrine disruptors harmful to aquatic life. As a consequence, some bodies of water have become biologically comatose, meaning the water is devoid of oxygen on the bottom and sometimes higher. Page 64. 28 million gallons of underground liquid waste from a landfill was entering their windmill bacterial technology filter pond annually and overpowering their system. They tweaked their system. So in this book they have pilot kind of projects. So 67. Nitrification is the process where nitrosomes and nitrobacterial species convert ammonia to nitrates and then nitrites and then into nitrates, which are less toxic form of nitrogen. Comatose Pond had not been nitrifying prior to our project, either because the appropriate bacteria were not present or there was something in the water inhibiting the process. 104. Pilot Eco Machine in 2006 made up of 2 parallel treatment systems. Each had 4 ecological components through which the contaminated water and oily sediments flowed. The total volume of the 2 systems was 400 gallons. The first 3 components were housed in clear-sided tanks, so the sun could get in. Each tank contained a different ecology. The first housed algae, which grew on screens. The second tank had specialty designed rafts that supported marsh plants on their surface. Their roots were colonized by a diversity of microbial life. The third tank was open water with microalgae, plankton, and fish. The fourth was housed in dark plastic chambers containing fungi. The fine networks of mycelia produce enzymes known to degrade many things. They hoped bunker C oil, which I don't know what that is. Standing water not allowed. The liquid ran through on a loop through the system. So once it got to the end, it just went back to the beginning. 137. Mining has destroyed over 1 million acres of one of the most biologically diverse temperate forests on Earth in Appalachia, streams buried, dams filled with toxic coal slurry. So, now I had known somebody who worked at there's an aquaculture program at the college here in the town where I live. And I'd known somebody who worked there. And anyway, the guys who worked there, they would kind of joke with each other about how they used to work at a different facility, and then once their project was proved unsustainable or something, like it didn't work for some reason, they would just take the same project and move to another location and work it all over again until they proved that it wasn't actually workable. And then they would move on. So this was just it was more a project done to make it look like things were moving in a positive direction when really they weren't. It was already proven that they weren't, and they would continue to do the same thing so that because it looks good. So it's more I mean, you have to wonder when, I mean, if you really think about it, who's paying for these? It's creating a lot of jobs for environmentalists to do some sort of research like that, right? And you hope that things are moving forward, and that something's going to come out of it, right? But then you have to think, well, they're still mining and dumping dams filled with toxic coal slurry, and it's not getting cleaned up. So is this just done to make people feel better about, oh, well, you know, we're cleaning things up, but really things are just getting worse and worse? I don't know. I mean, I would like to think that there's that things are moving in the right direction, but then I see videos like this and I'm like, they're really using the same systems for organic farming as farmers were using back in the 70s, and they're hoping that it'll be sustainable. And I mean, I guess if you can rope some people in to work for you for free and produce your food without paying themselves any labor at all, but honestly, so yeah, in this video they said, yeah, you got to get creative and stuff, and it's like, okay, but you're gonna have to get more creative than that, as far as I can see, right? Or it's not gonna work, because how often are you gonna be able? You're gonna have a high turnover rate of people coming in, you know, young people not paying themselves, working for a few years, and going, yeah, I actually would like to have a life, you know, or whatever. Like, anyway. Because their bodies are going to break down. So I mean, you do this kind of work, and you garden, or your body breaks down. So anyway, it's tough on the body. to use yourself as a tractor or as an ox. And anyway, and then you don't have the income to treat yourself, to try to pull your health back up or maintain that health or whatever. And it's not sustainable for a person to beat themselves up like that. It's hard work. Farming is hard work. So if farmers, and I'm not talking about the people who own the land, I'm talking about the people who are actually getting their hands dirty or poopy out there. If they aren't taken care of, if they don't have the income to take care of their own health, their bodies break down and they're used up. And I remember, like, there's a few things I'd like to mention about this. I had done a research project in university where I was looking at, I was interested to see, there's not a lot of organic farming in Alberta, and I was interested to see where the pockets were, or of organic farming, where they weren't, like where there were no organic farming. And then I wanted to find out about the organic farmers, what made them get into it, what were their backgrounds, their education level, and what discipline they studied. And what I found out was the organic farmers were not educated in agriculture or horticulture. They were, at the time, I mean, things might have changed by now, I don't know. But at the time, the majority of them were, when they were educated, and most of them had university education, it was humanities or something completely unrelated, right? And which I found interesting. And the reason that they were doing it was because they were able to compete. They were competitive. They made more money or farming organically, because at the time there wasn't a lot of competition for it. But now, I mean, you go to the grocery store and you get organic produce from California and you go, oh, okay, well, anyway. So I don't know if that's changed things, but so you might have to be a little more creative that way too. But so there was that, and the people who are in agriculture or in, like, are studying specifically to farm happen to be people who were already farmers or come from a farming background, and they don't necessarily seem to be the most creative people in the world, and I can't see them competing in the long run. Like, there were a lot of people I was going to school with who they seemed to think that they were big shots, and yet, like, for example, I hadn't applied for any scholarships. I didn't expect I would get any. And so while I was going to school there, I think this was my first year that I was going to university, but maybe it was my second, I'm not sure. Anyway, the scholarship office, somebody from there contacted me through email and told me to apply. They needed me to write an essay by this specific date. I needed to apply for this scholarship that was $3,000, and it was from 4-H. And I mean, if you look at what kind of person I am, if you've been following my blog at all, I like to cook, I like to sew, I crochet, I don't know, I do a lot of things that would make me 4-H sort of material, but I'm not one of them. But in writing, if you looked at who I am, then I should qualify, right? And so anyway, I was asked to apply, and so I did apply for this thing, and I put in a crummy essay because I didn't have a lot of time because I was busy actually working on my studies. And the woman in the scholarship office, like, I apologized for the quality of my essay and stuff that I put in. And she said, it doesn't matter because nobody else but you qualifies for, because at the time you had to have a GPA of over 3 to qualify for the scholarship. And nobody else qualified for it. Nobody else that I was going to school with, who their daddies were big ranchers or whatever, and they had their lives laid out for them. They sitting on millions of dollars worth of property, and they'd, you know, I would go to school with them, and they'd say to me, they were getting me, you know, because they didn't know who I was, but whatever, and they'd say, just let the people who know how to farm. And, you know, they were not into other people coming into to compete with them or anything like that. They were just like, just let us do our thing. We know what we're doing, kind of stuff. But did they? Because they didn't qualify for the student loans. They didn't qualify. They couldn't get a GPA over 3. So really, were they the best people to be farming? And here I am. I'm never going to have my own farm. At this rate, it doesn't look like it. And I got, you know, I was awarded the scholarship of $3,000. And then the next year, I looked in the scholarships thing to see if I could apply for it again, right? Because I was like, $3,000, that's something. And so I thought, well, if, you know, I might apply this year for scholarships if I can get that again. And they had taken out the requirement of GPA. And my husband laughed. At the time, he wasn't my husband, he was just my boyfriend, but he laughed and he said, I guess they really didn't like having to give you that scholarship. And, you know, I don't know, but it sure seems funny, doesn't it? So anyway, there's that. And then, you know, I often think about things like when I went on a school trip to Vancouver, I toured a lot of greenhouses in that area, and I noticed things, you know, well, everybody, like the other students, we were all talking about how the labor tended to be looking South American or Mexican, you know, maybe Central American, not, and Asian. That was the labor for the greenhouses. And they did not, if you approached them, they did not speak English. They didn't know. So it's funny, you know, thinking about, if you want to try to produce food in environmentally friendly ways or whatever, you might have to rope in some wannabe organic farmers. Or even if you want to compete with greenhouse production, are you going to be hiring in people without a citizenship, you know, and anyway, to pay less and less just so you can stay in the game. Anyway, James is here, so I guess I have to get him some food ready.